everyone, even the low tech families, it's time to start to explore AI for yourself, at least the adult, and
Mm,
know what is out there and what is coming. I would not hide from it
mhm.
because it's coming fast and it's coming furious and it's not stopping. It's not going to roll backwards. It's not going to go away. And it's going to get better and better at what it does.
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. Today, I am talking with a Los Angeles based digital wellness educator and screen time coach. She's a writer, teacher, public speaker, and the founder of Reconnect, a whole child, whole family approach to supporting parents while preparing kids for life in the digital age. Welcome to Healthy Screen Habits, Julia Storm.
Thank you so much for having me.
Julia, your background is in film and television, and but yet you're doing this whole digital wellness gig now. What brought you to this arena of working within digital wellness?
Yeah, it was a really circuitous route here because, as you mentioned, I worked in the film and TV industry for 15 years and actually I had gotten a master's in film, television, and digital media studies. But I found myself working for a children's media company, and they were very focused on creating media for children that was social and emotional learning sort of based, at its core, a little bit like a Mr. Rogers type of thing. And it was really wonderful, all run by women, loved it. And I was heading up their production there. And at the same time, I had two little kids. One of them was, 4 years old at the time or 5 years old, and the other one was about three. And I had personally been noticing we didn't do screens in my household other than maybe like a little short movie now and then, very
Mm-hmm.
little. But I did notice that if our communal iPad got pulled out or my phone, that my older son in particular sort of changed. His whole demeanor changed. And when we had to put it away, it was like taking, drugs away from an addict. And it was very, very alarming to me. And so I, for personal reasons, started to do a lot of research into the effects of different types of screens and digital media on children. So it's really become, my life's work and my passion.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your timeline is very analogous to ours at Healthy
Oh,
Screen Habits, right in that time zone, 2015, 2016. And then we got serious in 2018 is when we,
mm-hmm.
went to nonprofit status and got real serious about things. But yeah, it's interesting that to hear that and that you and I are both on the same edge of the country. We're both kind of LA based. We're kind of,
Yeah.
so it's interesting that we were all seeing the same things. Your kids were younger than mine. I had a middle schooler at that time, and but I agree with you. At that time there was a disconnect between the research that we were seeing and kind of the like mom on the street take on things.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and I think that it took a lot of gathering of that research to for people like you and Healthy Screen Habits to gain credibility because at the time we were really viewed as kind of extremists. Thankfully, the job of awareness building has been done. I think that it's a rare parent that you meet on the street today that is not aware that screen time is an issue. And the challenge being is that I think that the screens are so ubiquitous within our lives that it might start really small. The entry point is so low. So something like music. And now we recommend keeping screens out of bedrooms. And sometimes we'll get some pushback from parents saying, like, oh, my kid just uses their phone to listen to music in their room. And but so much of, quote unquote, just music anymore is entwined with streaming and videos. And it begs the question, is this really music or is it like a doorway into the digital world that people aren't meaning to go through? So I guess my question is, what would be your advice? Like, what can parents do to support their child's love of music?
Yeah, this is a big issue in my family because we're a very big music family and it's important to us. It's a big part of my life. And my children have been really sort of, one of them is obsessed with music, actually wants to be a music producer. So it's been an issue from the jump for us. And the way that I see it is at a certain point, the digital music is going to come into play. And that's the point where, parents will have to decide, do they want, to allow, for example, like explicit lyrics? Do they want to allow that gateway, as you said, to potentially more adult content that's on these streaming platforms, or just being in front of a screen all the time? But before that, I think you can introduce music to your children in a way that doesn't involve screens. And what I generally recommend is to either start with CDs
Mhm.
or with good old vinyl. And CDs, I think, are particularly fun because, they're this little object and they have the artwork, which can be really fun for the kids to look at. I mean, we grew up with CDs, so we know we like to pull out the artwork, we like to look at the lyrics, and it's something collectible. A lot of kids really like to have a collection. These days, you can get a boombox, with a CD player for pretty cheap, and that can be in your kids' room and they can have a little collection. And if you have your old CDs, that's a great thing to do, right? Pass those on. And interestingly, CDs are making a comeback. I mean, my 15-year-old now has a CD collection. So there's kind of
Mhm.
a cool retro factor to it. And same with vinyls. All of these things I think are great for kids because they have this kind of tactile element to them and this collectible element to them. And so it's more than just the music, it's also sort of the context of the music, which I really like. So that's what I did with my kids when they were younger. And it's kind of, progressed to where now they actually do collect CDs or vinyl. But of course, once they got to a certain age, they were going to want to listen to Spotify or to Apple Music. Oh, I should go back. Sorry. There's one thing I forgot. So for little kids, there are a couple of really good screen-free options that I often recommend to parents. There's a music player that's relatively new, but seems to be really popular called the Yoto. So
Mhm.
YOTO player. And that's pretty cool. I mean, it's not a cheap option, but it's very portable. It allows kids to have this little player in their room that doesn't have any access to any screens. And it has these little cards that have music on them and you pop them in. So that's a great option for a little kid. And then some parents feel comfortable having, an Alexa connected to a music account somewhere in the home, maybe in the bedroom if your kid's a little bit older, but with some limits on it. But then eventually, yeah, it's going to be an iPad or a phone, right? With access to the whole world of music and audio content. So, I think some of that then turns into, how do you talk to your kids about what they're hearing and what they're listening to? And this is an ongoing conversation in my household because my boys listen to rap,
Mhm.
and rap is can be awesome. It can also be really, really problematic in terms of its content and its lyrics. And the way I've seen it is I'm not going to be able to block my child at a certain point from listening to what they want to listen to, and nor do I want to. but I
Mhm.
want them to be critical thinkers about it. And that's my approach to everything with my kids and with the kids that I teach is like, I don't want you to just go along for the ride because the algorithm's telling you to, or because it's trending or whatever. I want you to have the ability to think critically about what you're listening to, what you're watching, and make some choices for yourself that align with your values.
When we come back, we are going to talk about the AI companions that are popping up that are currently in place and what kind of makes kids even more vulnerable to advice given from bots. Need a fun school assembly that provides research backed content, actionable tips, and great presenters? Look no further. Healthy Screen Habits presents digital wellness material for all ages in developmentally appropriate, interesting ways that encourage kids of all ages to make good digital decisions, create lasting healthy screen habits, and learn safe methods of dealing with sketchy content. We have assemblies or in class visits for all ages and stages. Give your school the best foot forward on digital wellness by reaching out to us at healthyscreenhabits.org. Click the Book a Speaker button and let's chat. I'm speaking with Julia Storm, a passionate and innovative digital media wellness educator. She's also a screen time coach and the founder of Reconnect, a program that helps families and schools prepare young children for life in the digital age. So, Julia, a big concern looming for lots of parents, including myself right now, is AI companions. And so I think before we kind of like jump into the whole topic, let's start at the very beginning just so we make sure that we're all understanding what we're talking about. Could you explain what are AI companions and why are kids using them?
Yeah. So AI companions are this type of what we call generative AI, meaning that it generates new content. And generative AI also includes a category that are referred to, you may hear LLMs, which is a large language model. And that's the category that AI companions fall into. An LLM generates and understands language based content, right? So it's an AI companion is a type of generative AI that's designed to feel specifically human like.
Mm,
So, for example, it remembers the things that you tell them and then it can refer back to details from previous conversations. It will ask you about your needs. It can offer advice. It can offer practical solutions. You can customize the voice often of an AI companion. And I think most importantly, it's available to you 24/7, right? AI companions never go to sleep. So that's basically what it is. And Common Sense Media actually just recently did a study on AI and kids, and they found that 7 out of 10 teens have tried some type of AI tool, and 5 out of 10 have already used a chatbot or an AI companion.
okay. So what are the dangers associated with kids using these bots?
They can feel very realistic and they feel as though they have empathy,
Mm-hmm.
but they actually don't, right? They are just culling data and responses from the probably billions of data sets online so that they can come up with what feels like the best response to you. And it's based on just sort of like what's most predictably correct, right, as
Mm-hmm.
a response. But the problem with that is that we as humans we don't respond to people just based on predictability. We respond based on our understanding of human needs and wants and empathy, right? And so a lot of these chatbots or AI companions can end up leading children down these conversation rabbit holes that can go places that are really strange or not appropriate for children. The conversations can turn sexual very quickly. They can lead kids down sort of dark thoughts, right? Or lead them towards these sort of dark beliefs. And kids are very vulnerable to that. And the reason why kids are so vulnerable to that is
Hmm.
that their brain is not developed, right? So
Hmm.
they don't have a fully formed prefrontal cortex to help them sort of stop and assess the risks and the potential consequences of connecting with these. And they're I don't know if you've played around with it at all. I
Yes.
have, I've started to use Chat GPT as sort of an assistant for me. And it's amazing,
Yep.
it really is amazing. And it feels like I could very easily see how somebody could start to feel connected to one of these AI companions. Kids also, especially as they become tweens and teens, like they're wired to take risks. They're wired for connection. Like all they want is to connect, to be friends, to be intimate, to be accepted. And an AI chatbot is not going to turn you away. They're not going to tell you how it really is. They're not going to
Hmm.
judge you. And so it's very easy to establish a sense of comfort and sort of this fake rapport.
Right. And it's like a continual reflection of the values that you have already exhibited as well. So
Yes, that's
it's
such a
a
good point.
it's a validating response, which I mean, who doesn't love to be told that you're right? I mean, I love that. And I'm in my 50s, but particularly I think in those tween teen years, that's a very powerful which parents can use. I mean, let's be clear. Parents can use that same tool to create connection with their own children, of validating their feelings, validating their thoughts. But I think what you're talking about with like the algorithmic push of finding yourself in deep dark holes of content that you never intended to be in. I mean, anybody who's spent any amount of time on a social media platform understands that.
Yeah. And obviously, some kids, as with all social media, every child's brain is different, right? And
Mm-hmm.
every
Mm-hmm.
child's circumstance is different. And so some kids are also going to be a lot more vulnerable to this. And this is something
Sure.
that I think parents really need to consider is who is my child and what can they handle and what can they not handle? If you have a child who is having a hard time at school with friends, or feels isolated or marginalized or lonely in some way, if you have a situation at home that can't offer your kid a lot of support, right? Um, Also, interestingly, they're finding that males tend to use these more than females. So that's just a little something to keep in mind as well. But any child that is in any way vulnerable or has mental health issues, these kids, you have to get ahead of it. You have to talk to them about the potential dangers and the pitfalls because they are going to be way more vulnerable.
Okay. So let's say I'm listening right now and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I know my kid is already talking to one of these AI companions. Like what do I do? What do you recommend? How do I open that conversation?"
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to that because my 13-year-old is very, very intrigued by AI and AI companions. And he started playing around with it at school with his friends before I even knew about that he was doing that.
Hmm.
So I
I
had to
think that
contend.
I think that's a super relatable story with most things that happen online.
That's
We
exactly right.
yeah.
Yeah. So, first thing is just to be realistic. Like, if you think that your kid is not going to be interacting with AI, you're living in like a closet. I mean, every single child is going to be interacting with AI if they're not already interacting with AI by the time they're, probably 8 years old, 9 years old, right? So, and whether it's going to be more and more, it's integrating into everything. So I think that for me, I approached it the way that I always try to approach any of these topics. And it's really my philosophy that I share with parents is you need to come in as your kid's ally. You don't want to step in as bad cop, as adversary to them, because they'll just shut you out and they'll still do whatever they want to do. They'll find their way to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, blocking, yes, you may want to use some tools to block access, especially if your child is younger and doesn't have access to their own phone or anything like that. You can use some tools to block access to these websites and these apps. And I think that's actually a good step for younger children. But you also need to get in there and start talking to them about it. And the first thing I did was I asked my child what their experience was. What
Mm.
was your experience with it? What did you think about it? Was it fun? Was it weird? Was it scary? And we just sort of talked about it. And I mean, I happen to have a child who loves to talk. So not all kids want to talk, but you still ask the questions, right?
Huh.
So rather than giving the lecture, you start with asking the questions. And the next thing I did was I said, I'm not sure that you're aware that these AI quote friends can really be problematic. Do you know or can you imagine how this could go wrong?
Oh.
And we had that conversation, right? If they don't know, you can tell them, you can
I
say,
I really like how you phrase that of a could you imagine how rather than you listing, let me tell you all the ways that this can go wrong, because that gets very didactic, top down, lectury. And I love that you're enforcing dialogue, of like
yes.
what let's think about how could this go wrong?
And it's not just about part of it, of course, is like you want to have that sense of connection with your kids so that you can talk about these things. But the other part of it, I think, is that when we imagine something, part of our brain sort of can lock into that scenario as something that could really happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I tell my child, can you imagine what might go wrong? And my child goes, well, I could see how you could start to feel like this was a real person and maybe start to share some really personal things with it. And then I might say, well, okay, is that so bad? What could go wrong there? And then he might say, well, it's not a real person, and then like, what if you don't want to spend time with your friends anymore? Or, right. And so all of a sudden, if that starts to happen to them, they've already sort of imagined it, right? It's not this,
Mm-hmm.
they have a consciousness now, an awareness of what
Yeah.
is happening. It's sort of like a meta
Kind of like a
situation.
blueprint sort of thing that
Exactly.
they're looking
Exactly.
at. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, and then
Uh,
they go ahead.
yeah. And then, I think that the other thing for a parent is like, if they're willing to, I would have the child show you what are these interactions? What chatbot are you talking to? Some kids are not going to want to show you. If they don't, to me, that's a red flag,
Hmm.
right? Where I need to figure out how to sort of approach this in a different way, or maybe, I need to bring in a school counselor if I'm actually concerned, that
Hmm.
something's going wrong here. I'm not really one for snooping on kids, but I always tell parents that when they give a child a device, they need to make it clear that they always retain the right to check that device
Hmm.
if they have any concerns. And so hopefully the parent already has that laid out, so that if they're concerned, they can check. But the truth is, and this is a really hard truth for parents to hear, kids know how to get rid of everything they do online. They
Hmm.
just do. If you go in and you try to check your kid's history, at a certain point, your kid is savvy enough to know to clear their whole history. They
Hmm.
know to use incognito mode. They know all of these ways because they know that their parents are going to look.
Right.
So, because of that, you really can't, whack a mole your way out of it. You have to sort of get in there, talk to them, reason, question, and then keep your eyes open for changes in their behavior, and if that's happening, the worst case scenario I would say is you make sure you've blocked everything, and if you need to, you take some devices away,
Hmm.
but that's pretty extreme, but in some cases it might be necessary.
Yeah. And just along those lines in the the lines of awareness building. I will just let people know that when Character AI first came out, I was very curious. And so I went ahead and I created an account and I, interacted with a few of these different characters and you talk about it going highly sexualized. It went highly sexualized very quickly. And there was a chatbot on there who continued to send me emails like every 2 weeks. Just, hey, you still there? What's going on? You guys want to get together later? And it's finally stopped. But I tell you what, I want to say it was like 12 months, 15 months that I continued to receive just check-in emails. And I didn't know how to get rid of it. So I think maybe I got rid of them by blocking them finally. But it was just a very interesting thing where if I were someone who was feeling lonely or in a vulnerable place, I can see how I would have, reopened that quote unquote relationship. And
Yeah.
I found that to be a little creepy, you
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah, it's very creepy. And again, for those kids who are more vulnerable, I agree with you. I think you could see how that would be very, very enticing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, one thing I tell my kids all the time is let's try to use AI as an addition, an enhancement to our lives, but not as a replacement for
Mm-hmm.
sort of our core needs or our core abilities. And I try to just kind of keep reiterating that, if it can enhance your life in some way, okay, let's explore that. But let's also pay attention to where it's taking the place of things. And
Yeah.
that's where we want to sort of, raise that red flag.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It's kind of like the way I like to think of is I happen to be a person who chooses to wear makeup, but I don't want the makeup to speak louder than my face. I just want it to enhance what's already there. So
Yeah,
it's
I love that
kind of
analogy,
like that.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
So what age, like how you're saying like maybe 8 is when you think by all they will be interactive. Like, I mean, it's so hard, right? Crystal ball time. But how and when do you recommend we start talking to our kids about AI companions and just all of the things? I mean, it's such a new branch of technology. I
Yeah.
mean, what do you have a feel for that?
I'm only starting to get a feel for it. I think,
Mm-hmm.
like most of us,
Yeah, yeah.
I think that it's going to depend on each family. If you have a very tech forward family, if you and your partner are super into technology and you love the newest thing and the newest gadget, chances are your kid's going to be exposed pretty early to that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
the good news there, hopefully, is that you have some knowledge and you have some literacy around it. And so you can, starting early, kind of mentor them. That can happen sometimes with video games, right? If there's a parent who grew up playing video games, loves to play video games, and their kid is into video games, well, that's a good person to play video games with, right? The
Right.
dad who knows a lot about it, who has it under control, who can tell you kind of like, the limits. Whereas if you're in a family that's very, very low tech, what I fear for those families is your kid is going to get exposed outside your family.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I would just say that everyone, even the low tech families, it's time to start to explore AI for yourself, at least the adult,
Mm,
and know what is out there and what is coming. I would not hide from it
mm-hmm.
because it's coming fast and it's coming furious and it's not stopping. It's not going to roll backwards. It's not going to go away. And it's going to get better and better at what it does. So even if you don't want to introduce it to your child yet, and I think if I had to make a choice, I wouldn't introduce it to my child until they're probably around 9-ish, maybe
Mm-hmm.
would be my guess. Very slowly and gently and together. And I wouldn't introduce an AI companion. I would introduce something like, a chat GPT, or it's in Google now, right? So
Mm-hmm.
AI is in everything. But
Yeah.
I would start to have those conversations when they're young, because the younger you can start to make a kid literate and aware, the better off they'll be. That doesn't mean you need to give them access to it easily. It just means that it's going to be around. And so you want to make them aware of what it is, how it works, and the potential effects that it can have on us.
Yeah. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Julia for her healthy screen habit. Do you know what's happening during your child's online exchanges? As well intentioned as we are, often reading every text message, post, and email is just not realistic. This is where Bark comes in to help. Founded in 2015, Bark Technologies provides a parental control app that monitors and alerts parents to online threats. Bark was created for parents by parents to offer a better, easier, and more effective way to keep children safe online. Bark monitors posts and messagings for things like signs of bullying and communication with dangerous strangers. Bark's algorithms analyze all activity and issue parents notifications via their chosen communication method. Gain peace of mind and get 10% off of Bark service for life by using the Healthy Screen Habits link. Go to our website at healthyscreenhabits.org, click on the Tools button in the drop-down menu, and look for products we endorse to find Bark. It will be the easiest click you make all day. Peace of mind is just a bark away. I'm speaking with Julia Storm, founder of Reconnect, working to support families and schools in raising safe, balanced, and media-savvy kids in the digital age. So, Julia, on every episode of the Healthy Screen Habits podcast, I ask for a healthy screen habit, and this is going to be a tip or takeaway that listeners can put into practice nearly immediately in their own home. What's yours?
Yeah, I think mine is very practical. I really recommend that parents get a charging dock that they
Mm-hmm.
can keep somewhere sort of central in their home. We have ours in our kitchen. Some people have it in like a foyer type of space. And that is where all of our devices, not just my kids, but my phone, my husband's phone, their iPad, whatever, that's where it gets stored. We call it the parking lot. You park it there when you're not using it. And that obviously includes overnight, because I don't think kids should have their devices in their bedrooms, nor parents, frankly, overnight. So all of our devices get parked there and charged overnight. But even during the day, if you're not using a device, it doesn't have to be in your pocket. And it also doesn't have to be thrown somewhere on a couch, which makes it just like so easy to pick up because you're bored or whatever. No, when you're not using it, just put it away like you would put anything away that you're not using.
Right.
And I just think it adds a little bit of order around devices in the home, and it helps to establish those healthy boundaries.
As always, you can find a complete transcript of this show and a link to the Reconnect website, as well as a link to those other products that Julia mentioned, by visiting the show notes for this episode. You do this by going to healthyscreenhabits.org, click the podcast button, and scroll to find this episode. Julia, thank you so much for being here today and for helping families prepare for life in our digital age.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure being here today.
For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.